We're in week number 2 today of a series called Restart that we're doing here at the beginning of the year, Restart. I have a child, and I'm not going to tell you his name or which one he is, but anyway, I have a child. And this guy is a little bit lactose intolerant, okay? But he loves ice cream, all right? And as his father, I just want to give him what he likes. So we just deal with the consequences of his intolerance to lactose. So we'll get ice cream. And on the way home from ice cream, right, what he'll do is I don't know if he recognizes how this works yet, but he will preemptively say something like, "Oh, what is that?" Right? Like he does it before he does the business, right? Before he passes gas, he lets us know, "What is that?" And we're all looking around like, there's nothing. Like, what are you talking about? And then a little bit later, it hits you. It hits everybody in the car. We're like, oh my goodness, what is that? And he'll immediately say, "It wasn't me. Who smelt it, dealt it," right? He says that right away, which honestly, I'm the one that taught him that, right? So I'm dealing with the repercussions of my own actions, but who smelt it, dealt it. I didn't have to teach him. Some of you are very uncomfortable with this passing gas story at the beginning. There's a point to it, right? And it will lead you to the Lord, okay? So he did not have to learn how to blame people when he felt like he did something wrong. Are you with me? Like as a father, there's a lot of stuff I've got to teach him. There's a lot of stuff I've got to show him. There's a lot of stuff where you have to train him. But on this one, when it comes to blaming, when it comes to passing the buck, he picked that up all on his own, right? It's in his DNA, right? He gets it from his mother. That's why he's able to just do that. That's why he was born with that. And we're all like that in a lot of ways. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today in week number 2 of Restart. And the point of this series is that we would restart and recognize how to ensure that this year will be better than last year. How to ensure this year's better than last year. And I think by now, most of you have picked up on the idea that we're not just restarting in our regrets or our mistakes or our failures or shortcomings from 2023. I think by now you've picked up on the idea that you might be 10 or 15 years into a marriage and you are seeing, you know what? Things are not headed in the direction that glorifies God. Things are not headed in the direction where we dreamed for things to be. And we're not headed on the right track right now. So this is an opportunity for us to restart. This is an opportunity for us to get going again so that we can put life on the right path, headed in the right way. Are you with me? Like you might be a junior in high school, and maybe in this series you started to realize, there's some dreams, some hopes, some ambitions I have for my life. And if I keep going this way, right, if my report cards keep looking like this, I'm probably not going to get there. And this is an opportunity for you to restart, for you to change some things, for you to experience growth and get your life moving in the direction that you want it to go so that you can be where you hope to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. We're not reinventing ourselves. We're not chasing after perfection, but I hope that we will understand that every small decision and every small moment along our lives is leading us in a certain direction. And I pray that for those of you who are followers of Jesus, you would want to head in that direction of becoming more like Jesus in every area of your life. And if you're here today and you're not a follower of Jesus, even you would have to admit that you want your life to head a certain way. And the decisions you make today impact the life that you will live 5, 10, 20 years from now. So we have this amazing opportunity to restart. Because as a pastor, what I've seen over time is I have watched people for 15 years self-sabotage. I have watched people for 15 years mess up their own lives. I have watched people for 15 years repeat bad decisions and bad cycles of behavior and come to me and ask, why am I here again talking to you about this same thing, right? And sometimes I'm just like, well, I got some ideas, right? But sometimes it's something that we've got to work on, right? So last week, we looked at some things that can be obstacles to our successful restarts. Some myths that we have to dispel before we get moving. We'll go over those real quick. Number one was the experience myth. And this is the myth that experience makes you wiser, right? And we looked at this is for bonus credit. If anyone can remember, we understood experience doesn't make you wiser. Experience just makes you older. Someone got it. Good job. Bonus points. I know someone at home was shouting it right now. Experience makes you older. It makes you broker. It makes you in debt-er. It just amplifies sometimes your own bad choices or bad behavior. Evaluated experience makes you wiser. So we're going to take some time today and we're going to evaluate the experiences of our past in a healthy way to grow closer to God, to grow closer to those things that we desire for our lives in our preferred future. The other myth is the know better myth. And that is the myth that simply because we know better, we will automatically do better, right? And every parent in the room knows, like, no, that is not how it works, right? And the people who are successful in their restarts are people who are able to figure out how knowing better can turn into doing better. The people who can reverse engineer the outcomes they want so that they can take those daily habits and daily steps towards the future that they long for. That's the only way things are going to be better or different this time around than they were last time around. The other myth is the time myth. It's a myth that we've got to dispel. Because this is the myth that says, time is my enemy. I'm running out of time. I'm not getting any younger. I don't know how I'm going to make it. This is the myth where we put all of these sometimes arbitrary, but definitely imaginary deadlines in our lives. Are any of you like that, where you're like, well, you know what? My brothers and sisters, they got married like by this time. And the people that I went to school with, they've got this kind of job. And all my friends live in this kind of house. And so we put these deadlines on our life. I'm running out of time. And it makes us rush into bad decisions. It makes us rush into bad choices. It makes us rush into the next phase of our life more quickly than we ought because we don't take the time to stop, to evaluate our experiences, to stop and to turn knowing better into doing better. We just jump into the next thing. Some of you serial daters, like, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about breakfast. I'm talking about just all the bad relationships that you have been in, right? And you, never mind, I'm not gonna say that. So you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, okay? It's people who will repeat the same mistake over and over and over again. So we wanna help you avoid those myths and move into the future that God desires for you. I believe that we can see that happen. And in order for it to happen, there's three practices, three exercises that we're going to walk through over 3 weeks in this series. Because also as a pastor, one of the beautiful things that I've been able to see, I've been able to see people successfully restart in many different areas of life. Like, I've seen people turn their marriages around. I have seen people turn their careers around. I have seen people turn their academic pursuits. I have seen people truly turn their lives around. It's possible, but it takes some work. And so there's three practices we're going to look at in 3 weeks in this series. Number one is to own it. That's what we're going to talk about today. What do we do with our past? What do we do with our experiences? We got to own it, rethink it, and release it. Before you say anything, I worked really hard to figure out how to turn own it into an R word, right? But there was just no good R word. So the Pentecostal preacher inside of me died a little bit because I could not alliterate that point, but we're gonna go for making sense over alliteration there, all right? So own it, rethink it, release it. Let's say that together because you guys are tired and cold, right? 1, 2, 3. Own it, rethink it, release it. I feel like Tony Robbins for a second there, okay. Without the fire, all right. Number one, if you're taking notes today, we're talking about what it means to own it, what it means to own our part of the past. If you're taking notes, this is what it means. In order for you to ensure that your negative history doesn't repeat itself, you have to own your role in your negative history. Now, I'm talking about things that happened in our lives after we reached an age, after we reached a point in life where we had agency, where we were making decisions and we were making choices, right? I want you to hear this. I'm not talking about things that may have happened in your life or things that may have happened to you before you were at the age where you can make your own decisions and choices. Because for some of you, what you are working through and what what you are processing and what you are dealing with, as you evaluate your experiences, you got to evaluate a lot of stuff that happened to you completely at the hands of other people, right? In a time where you had no power, a time where you had no agency. So let's put an age on this. And this is not set in stone, but let's say around 17 years old, where your frontal lobe is kind of developing, but it's not fully developed, right? But you can drive. We give you a car and we tell you to drive the car. So from that point on, let's assume you're making choices, you're making decisions, and you're responsible. So the stuff in your life past that point, we have to own our roles in our history from that point on. Don't be in such a rush to move on that you skip this time of owning your part in that. Evaluating your experiences romantically or professionally or academically or whatever it might be. Because what you will find, and you've heard me say this often, is that in order to move ahead, you've got to look back. It requires that. Like life requires that so often. You have to look back in order to move ahead. But we fail to do that. And we definitely fail to own it. You know why? Because there's nothing to own, Jason. It wasn't my fault, right? It was all these other people's fault, right? That professor hated me from day one, and she just had it out for me. Everybody else passed her class, but that doesn't matter. She had it out for me, right? Oh, it's not my fault. Have you ever tried to work for that guy? Nobody can work for that guy, right? Like nobody does well at that job. It's an impossible, it's not my fault. My husband had a midlife crisis and he just left one day. He thought he was 15 years old again. Like, that's not my fault. My wife got addicted to alcohol. Like, that's not my fault. There's all these things that we walk through in life, things that we go through where we can so quickly dissuade blame from ourselves. We're like, it's not my fault. There's nothing for me to own. I didn't do anything wrong. And the reason that we often feel that way, the reason that we often tell our story like that is because we want a better story to tell. Are you with me? The story where everyone is a villain and I am a victim, that just feels like a better story. The story where I've got to be like, now, I probably procrastinated a lot and I definitely, I didn't do my best. I really just kind of fooled around. Like, I don't know. That's not a very sexy story. I don't want to tell that story. So we look for a better story to tell when it comes to our lives sometimes. I remember when I was going into middle school, so I guess from 5th grade to 6th grade, the summer in between, I broke my humerus clean all the way through because at the time I was a pro wrestling fan. And my favorite wrestler was Rey Mysterio. Anybody remember Rey Mysterio? Any wrestling people? Yeah, Rey Mysterio, he could fly like a bird. I don't even know how he could do it. He could fly. So I thought I was Rey Mysterio. So one day I climb up on our living room couch. I'm on the back of the couch and I'm gonna just fly off the couch and pin a couch cushion, something that's on the carpet, right? So I jump off the couch and I'm gonna land just like this on the floor, but our bodies are not meant to be that, and I'm not Rey Mysterio, right? He falls on something bouncy, I just fell on the floor. So I break my arm clean through. My brother is the one who took me to the ER. So my brother takes me to the ER and he works there. So these are his friends, these are people who know him, and he's like, hey, just tell him what happened. And I start telling the story, but in my mind, as a teenager, I'm like, this is not a cool story. Like, I don't want to tell this to people. This is embarrassing. This sounds really sad. I was by myself pretending to wrestle and I broke my arm. So I just made this story up, right, in the ER. And I was like just the hero quarterback of my pickup football league on my street. Like, I made up this story. The problem is these are all very smart people who very quickly were like, this guy's making the story up, right? Like, this is not true. And it gets so bad, I kid you not, it gets so bad, my brother eventually comes back in the room and he's like, Jason, here's the thing, right? Like, you came here without mom or dad. Like, I'm the one that brought you here, and I might be on the verge of getting in trouble if you don't tell them what actually happened to you, because everybody knows you're making the story up. And that's when I learned, like, when you go to the ER, just tell them the truth. Tell them what actually happened. And the truth is, we do this sometimes with our life. Like when you're telling your story to people, and sometimes when you're telling your story to yourself, Or you're kind of like, I don't like that version of the story. I don't like my part of that story. I don't want to be too honest about my role in these things that didn't go the way I wanted them to go and didn't go the way that I planned for them to go. So we start making up just a better story. And what will happen is when we make up that story, sometimes we start to believe that story. And that's the reason that sometimes we pass the buck. That's the reason sometimes we don't want to accept blame for the things that are happening in our life. But I'm telling you, your best bet for a successful future is to own your share of the past. Because I've seen this over and over in 15 years of ministry for people who will not own their share of the past. Their past owns them. And it goes with them everywhere. And it destroys relationships. It destroys careers. It destroys their pursuits. It'll destroy the hopes and dreams that they have for their lives. We got to own the share of the past. Now, here's the problem. The problem is just like Gideon, we are natural born blamers. That's just in us. It's hardwired in our souls because we're related to these two biblical figures named Adam and Eve. And for Adam and Eve, God puts them in this perfect place. God puts them in the Garden of Eden, and he gives them just one command. We're going to read that right now. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Moses goes out of our way to tell us this because it means that every person has inherent dignity as the image bearers of God. It's an important part of the biblical narrative. And so he creates them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them. And God said to them what? Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Or maybe Adam was like, well, God, like, what about the 10 Commandments? Like, isn't that important? And God's like, no, Adam, that's like hundreds of years from now, right? Like right now, you got one commandment. Just do this one thing. And what is the one thing? It's like make babies and have fun on the earth and eat food and enjoy everything that I've given you. It's an incredible reminder that when things were the way God wanted them to be, when everything was exactly how he wanted them to be, there was no need for 10 commandments. There was no need for 613 laws in the Jewish code because the way we were treating each other, the way that we were living in this world, the way that we were enjoying life glorified God, and it was perfect. So if your image of God is this hyper rule-making, police officer who's trying to keep you in line and keep you from, police officers are great. I'm just saying, someone who's trying to keep you in line and keep you following the rules and keep you doing the things that he wants you to do. That's not how it was meant to be. So God puts Adam and Eve in the garden, and this is what they experienced. Can you see? The story is full of grace. It's not a story of condemnation. It's a story of grace. Eat everything. Enjoy life. Flourish. But here's one command. Because God has to establish himself as boss. He has to establish himself as the ruler. He has to establish himself as the one who leads this world and leads your life. So here's one thing not to do. And of course, like toddlers, if there's one thing you're not supposed to do, that's what Adam and Eve do. And we recognize it's not a matter of choosing the wrong fruit. If you're familiar with this passage, they didn't just choose the wrong fruit, because sometimes I think as a kid, I just had a problem with this passage. I was like, man, so one day if I opened the fridge and I got the wrong thing out of the fridge and ate it, God would just be like, I'm kicking you out of this house and I don't ever want you to come. Is that how God is? But what Adam and Eve did wasn't choose the wrong fruit. They chose the wrong friend. Don't miss that part. Where God is coming and walking with them in the cool of the day every day. They have this perfect relationship with God, but they chose friendship with this world over the relationship that they had with God. They're like, maybe there's something better or more than having a perfect relationship with God. So they eat of this fruit. They eat of the one tree they're not supposed to eat of. They disobey that one command that God's given them. And that messes everything up. It throws the world into chaos. It throws our lives into sin, because of that moment, we are sinners. And if you're offended by that, you know this about yourself. Like, you don't even follow your own rules, right? Like, you don't exercise 3 times a week. You don't eat the right kind of food. You mistreat people, and then you feel guilty about it, and then you mistreat people again. Like, we can all admit that we are messed up in some way. And that comes into our lives through this moment. Sin breaks the world, breaks our relationship with God, and messes us up. So what happens? After this mistake, the man and his wife, they heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and they hid from him. They hid from him, the Lord God, among the trees of the garden. They are hiding from God in God's garden. It's just a bad idea. It just doesn't make any sense. But here we see why the Genesis account is such a brilliant idea of what the human condition is like, an insight into human nature. Because this is what all of us do when we feel like we've done something wrong. This is what all of us do when we feel like we've messed up. This is what all of us do when we feel like we've made a mistake. What do? We hide. We hide from ourselves. We hide from the people who care about us. We hide from other people. We hide sometimes in the most obvious places because guilt and shame make us hide. They make us hide. And then at some point in time, we get caught. We mess up, we make a mistake, we've got a bad pattern of thinking, a bad pattern of living. We get caught at some point. And when we get caught, what do we say? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Sometimes we'll say, like, that's not how I am, right? Like, I don't want you to think I'm like that. That's not really me. I'm sorry. And nobody believes us. Nobody believes us. Because everybody around us knows, they're like, you're not really sorry. You're just sorry you got caught. You're just sorry you got caught because you've been hiding for like 10 years. You're just sorry now because this has come out. You're just sorry now because this has come into the light. I've seen this over and over and over in my time in ministry. And so what happens? What happens? Verse 9. The Lord God calls to the man. He says, where are you? I want you to see this. God comes into the garden to walk with them as he always has. And he's not coming there asking Adam, where are you? So he can put Adam over his knee and condemn him or punish him. He's asking, where are you, Adam? Because he's like, I want to walk with you as I always have. I want to have a relationship with you as I always have. Where are you? And Adam answered, I heard you in the garden and I was afraid. Guilt and shame causes fear because I was naked. So I hid. I messed up, so I hid from you. And God said, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I have commanded you not to eat from? In other words, who told you to feel guilt? And who told you to feel shame? And who told you that you needed to hide from me? God knew that there was a who involved in this. Who told you? So Adam's response, verse 12, this is what Adam said. Adam answered, yes, Lord, I did eat from the tree, and I take full responsibility for my actions. Do with me as you will, but leave Eve out of this. She's completely innocent, right? Some of you are laughing because you grew up in Sunday school. You kind of know how this is supposed to go. This is what he should have said. That's the Pastor Jason translation. This is what he should have said. This is what all of us should say. This is how we should live. But what does Adam do? The first thing we do when we mess up is we blame somebody else. Then the man said, the woman you put here with me. He's talking to God. The woman you put here with me. God, I was fine, right? I was fine. Then you were like, you know what? It's not good for you to be alone. And so you bring woman and you're like, okay, this is going to be your wife. And like, okay, like you did all this, God. The woman you put here with me, she gave me some fruit from the tree and I ate it. Check out Adam's logic here, right? Like, God, this is your fault and this is her fault. So you two get together and you have a discussion. You figure out what went wrong. And if I'm in the mood by the time you're done, I might forgive you and maybe we can move forward with this thing. That's the way that Adam sees it. And here's what's weird about it. Here's what's weird about it. If you really think about what's written there, it's kind of true. Like what Adam says is kind of true. It is somewhat true. It's just not the whole truth. And this is what we do with our stories. This is what we do sometimes when you're evaluating your experiences, when you're looking back and you're thinking about the things that didn't go the way you wanted them to go, that job that didn't work out like you hoped, the fact that you didn't get into the school that you wanted to get into, like all that stuff in life that you look back on. Sometimes what we'll do is we invent a story that's kind of true, but it's not the whole truth. We leave out really important bits and pieces that are our responsibility and that are our part of it. And what I've seen with people over and over is if you say that 90%, 80% true story enough times, you really start to believe it's the whole truth. Like you start to believe that is the story. That really is what happened. That really is how it went down. Verse 13, then the Lord said to the woman, what is it that you have done? And the woman answered, the serpent deceived me and I ate. Same thing for her, quick to pass blame on to other people. And I'm telling you, if we are not able to take responsibility for our parts of our stories, you will have the same results in 2024 in those areas of life that you did in 2023. And you will bring everything from your past with you. A couple things to write down if you're taking notes. We cannot blame our way into a better future. We're so naturally gifted and inclined to blame others for the things in life that haven't gone as planned, our mistakes, our regrets, but we cannot blame our way into a better future because blame enables us to smuggle our issues into the future. If nobody knows about it, if I've hidden this for long enough, if I hide this from myself, if I blame other people, if I blame my circumstances, if I blame, and I've changed my story enough times that I even start to believe this story that I have made up, well, then I can keep that part of my life, right, tucked away in my pocket, and I can get it through customs, and I can get it into the arena, I can get it wherever I want, and I'm gonna take it into the next phase of my life. Are you with me? And so for some of us, because of the way that we live and because of the way we view our past, because we won't own it, we smuggle our addiction. It might be from one marriage to the next marriage, or one job to the next job to the next job, where you smuggle your bad relationship skills. And it's smuggled into your life with your kids and smuggled into your life with your grandkids. It could be unresolved daddy issues, unresolved mommy issues. I don't know what it is, but because of our inability to see those things for what they are, because we hide so well, because we blame so well, we smuggle those things into every part of our life, our materialism, our lust, our dysfunction, our greed. And we wonder why we end up getting the same results in life. In different places, in different stages. You can move to a different state and you're like, why is my story repeating? I have moved to this new state and I thought I was starting my life over, because blame sets us up for a repeat performance. And though you want so desperately to restart some area of your life, you will repeat everything that has happened in the past as long as you are smuggling things with you because you blame and because you hide. Owning your part of the past results in clarity for your future. Owning your part of the past is what results in clarity for your future. As long as you are blaming and hiding and smuggling, there's going to be this fog in your life. You will not be able to see clearly. You will not be able to assess where you are so that you can make the changes you need to make for the future. Jesus hits on this in the most famous sermon, the Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 5, verse 8, Jesus said, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. They will see God. In other words, there's this connection between purity and clarity. And Jesus is saying, if you'll clean your heart out, if you'll clean off those cobwebs, if you will stop hiding, if you will stop hiding from yourself, if you will stop hiding from others, the people you can trust, if you will start letting other people into your story, if you will start to truly own your part of your past, then you can move in clarity and see. When he says you can see God, he's saying you can see what God is up to. You can see the purposes of God coming to pass. You can see what God is doing and how God is inviting you into his purpose and his plan. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. And so for many of you who might be tormented by regret, tormented by mistakes, it wakes you up randomly at 2 a.m. and you think about something you did in college and you're just like, why can't I get past this? I want you to know the beauty of this. You make peace with your past by owning your piece of the past. You will make peace with the past and move into a better future when you own your piece of the past. So I'm going to give you some homework to do. And you've got to do this today. It's cold. You'll be cooped up inside. It's perfect. You have to do this today because if you try to do it tomorrow, you're going to be like, he almost got me, right? He almost got me. My friend took me to that church. They told me it was a safe place to go. It was not a safe place. Like, I'm not going back there, right? I prefer messages where I don't understand what they're saying because then I feel really close to God. But this was too close to home. So here's your homework. I want you to go home. I want you to draw a circle. And you're going to call this the circle of blame. The circle of blame. And it can apply to different arenas, different areas of your life. It might be a past marriage, might be a past relationship, might be a job that didn't work out. It might be a team you wanted to get on, you didn't make it. Whatever it is, create this circle of blame. And then I want you to cut out pie slices in that circle. And you're going to figure out which part of it was on you and which part of it you're blaming on somebody else, right? And maybe you'll have one like this, where you're like, you know what, I can see my part in this. I'm half to blame. I'm gonna be honest with you, I've been doing this job for 15 years. Nobody ever draws that circle. I've never once. I ask people to do this when we're counseling. No one ever feels like they are half to blame and the other person is half to blame. So maybe you're more mature and you have a circle a little bit more like this one. And you're like, I can definitely see what I've done. And there was definitely some things that other people did. There's definitely that job and the culture at that place, it wasn't right. But I can see my part of it. And maybe if you're awesome, you draw a pie like this and you're like, this much of it is my fault. At least 25% of it is on me. Can I tell you again, nobody ever draws a circle like this, all right? This is what I get almost every time when I have people do this. Every time it's something like this. I can't even write the word me in there. But they're like, yeah, here's the thing, man. My industry is messed up, Jason. Everybody's messed up. This is how everybody is. You gotta be this way. Now, there's probably some stuff that I shouldn't have done, and I don't know. I could have done better in that part. You don't understand. That professor had it out for me. Now, I definitely procrastinated all the time and hung out with my friends that whole semester. Like, I could maybe see that. Maybe I'll take that much of it. Whatever it is for you, I want you to create this circle. How much of it is on you? Decisions you've made, things you did, and you need to write those things down. I was late every day. I was a jerk to all my coworkers. Write down your part of it. And as you do, I believe you'll start to make peace with your past when you own your piece of the past. Truly evaluate your experience and see where God is leading you to grow. This hits home really. This is serious, right? And I know it's a snow day and I'm trying my best to get you out of here fast. I really am. But I also want you to hear this. This has got to sink into your soul because I want things to get better. I want you to honor God with your life and your relationships and your work and school in every way. I don't want you to waste opportunities. I want you to step into the future that God desires for you. And as some of you are writing this stuff down, you might go into it thinking I don't think I've got a lot to own. I feel like that relationship just didn't work out. I feel like that's fully on them. But I want you to hear this. This is some of the stuff you're going to say to yourself, right? Because you had moments where I had a feeling something wasn't right, but I was afraid to dig around. I was afraid of what I would find. And some of you have been there. You knew you should have asked a couple more people about this person. I should have done a background check. I should have called 2 more references. I knew something was off, but my emotions got in the way. I got excited and I didn't dig around. Here's a big one for some of you. People I trusted warned me, but I wouldn't listen. And some of you are gonna write that down in your circle. All my friends told me that this guy was trouble. Everybody had a feeling. Everybody knew something was off, but I wouldn't listen to them. I was greedy. I was lonely. I know I made a mistake, but I was just so lonely at that time in my life. I was jealous. I was jealous of my siblings. I was jealous of my friends. I wanted a different kind of life, so I stepped into something I shouldn't have stepped into. I did something I shouldn't have done. I was afraid. I was afraid to say something. I was afraid to stand up for what was right. I was afraid to stand up for what was true. My lust got the best of me. You need to write this down today as you think through these things. My pride got the best of me. I didn't do my best. I didn't bring my best. I was not a good steward of the opportunity or the chances that God presented to me. I just didn't do my best. I should have confronted them, but I was afraid. Students in the room, I should have left, but I was embarrassed. How many times have you been in a place where you knew that wasn't a place where you should have been? You knew that was not a place where God would want you to be. You knew you were in a place that had a chance to wreck your life because of one moment and one couple hours where you were somewhere where you didn't need to be. And you knew you should have left, but you were afraid. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want people to call me a loser. I don't want people to look at me a certain way, so I'm going to stay here even though everything in me is telling me to get out. I don't want you to live a life of regret. Come out of the hiding and step into the future that God desires for you. You have to own your part of the past or it will own you and it will go with you wherever you go. That's why we talk about things like community groups. That's why we talk about accountability in church. When you are able to stop hiding, and I love this about our church, you don't need to hide here. No one will treat you differently when you open up to them in this place. But people will walk with you through your struggles. People will walk with you as you look to grow. People will walk with you. They will help you. They will stand beside you. They will not abandon you because we've been given this model by our Creator that even if someone has made a mistake, even if someone has messed up, even if someone has done something to wreck their life, we go back into the garden and we ask, where are you, brother? Where are you, sister? I'm looking for you. Let's walk together and let's grow into who God is calling us to be. Man, I've got countless stories that I could share with you of how people have been able to hide so long in church. I remember one time, not at this church. I worked at a large church in Oklahoma City, 6,000 people. I was overseeing all the adult discipleship there. And one day I was supposed to do a funeral for somebody who I thought I knew so well. A friend of mine, just a great member of our church, always serving, always at church. I was like, man, this is an outstanding guy. And I go into the office to meet with his wife and his children. And I met with them. And we start planning a funeral. And then I walk out, and my assistant called me that day and said, hey, this guy's wife is on the phone, and she would like to meet with you. And I'm telling her, you don't understand. I just talked to his wife. Like, we just had a meeting. And she's like, no, his wife is on the phone and she wants to talk to you. And I come to find out this in Oklahoma City. Here's a man who's a part of my church, a man who I know, and he has two families living on two sides of town. And somehow he's able to divide his life, hide from everybody, and move forward with this. And as I'm talking to these women, because I want to be like you, like, oh, this guy, I can't believe it, right? Our whole staff is, oh, this guy. And as I'm talking to these women, I discover they both know what's going on. And I've got to tell them, you've got to own your part of this. Yeah, we have a man here who made a lot of mistakes, who messed up his life in a lot of ways, but I told those ladies, you have to own your part of this. Like, you could have stopped this too, and you didn't. My friends, we got to quit hiding. And I've got story after story like that. I probably shouldn't share all those, but I want you to know this because I just recognize how possible it is for people to come in here and look like they have it all together and look like everything's fine while their lives are being wrecked and running totally off course with what God wants and even with what is good for them. And so I take this so seriously. It's time for us to come to our senses. It's time for us to own our piece of the past. When you do it, you will have incredible peace, and your future relationships, career, decisions, your life will improve vastly as you live for God and experience the flourishing, thriving life that He desires for you. Amen? Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for